These are not shared values. And I'm glad that Democrats increasingly, slowly are starting to speak up. Let's see if the rest of them do.
Mehdi Hasan, we thank you so much for being with us. Journalist and author, host of shows on MSNBC and Peacock. His new book is Win Every Argument: The Art of Debating, Persuading, and Public Speaking. That does it for our show. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Thanks so much for joining us.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along today. Tuesday special for us because not only do we stream live across the variety of social media platforms, but we're here live on KFAI. KFAI is truly a jewel of the community. You just heard Amy Goodman's show, always informative, always dynamic, always progressive. This is a thinking person's radio. Well, today's show carries that tradition forward in the form of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Before I bring my guest on, I want to remind you that if you're tuning into us right now through any of the social media platforms, we want you to help grow this project, this process, this engagement, this community. Right now, we are streaming, as well as being live on radio on KFAI. We're streaming live to YouTube for the Black Press of America. We're streaming live to Insight's YouTube page. We're streaming live to Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you're on any of those platforms, if you're listening on the radio, jump on your computer or your phone and cruise over to the Insight News YouTube channel. And there, subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share. We want to build community. We want to create a way for us to stay connected, to keep you notified when we're going live. We do this every day, 5 days a week. And I tell you, we have fun. We have great people. Let me know if you're on social media. I see David Rabb has checked in. Good afternoon, David. Let me know where you are. And I want to shout you out. Thank you for watching or listening and being part of the program. Well, today I have the great honor of talking with a new friend that I just met, but somebody that I know I'm going to love having a relationship with, and that's Sara M. Lomax. She's the president and CEO of WURD Radio, Pennsylvania's only African-American owned talk radio station. Now, she's credited with transforming WURD Radio from a legacy talk radio station to a multimedia communications company providing cutting-edge original programming on air, online, and through community events. In 2017, she led the expansion of 900 AM WURD to the FM dial, now simulcasting both at 900 AM and 96.1 FM. In 2018, she spearheaded the launch of an environmental justice journalism platform called EcoWord. Maybe it's EcoWord, she'll tell me, EcoWord.com. And in 2019, she launched a new initiative called Livelihood, focused on jobs, career readiness, entrepreneurship to address the persistent wealth gap in the Black community. And most recently, she's co-founded a new media company called URL Media. It's a network of Black and Brown owned media organizations that share content, distribution, and revenues to increase their long-term sustainability. So prior to her work with WURD Radio and URL, in 1992, she co-founded HealthQuest, Total Wellness for Body, Mind, and Spirit. It was a trailblazing African-American consumer health magazine that grew from a quarterly publication to a bi-monthly with a national circulation of over 500,000. She's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the Columbia University Graduate School of journalism. She's written for the Miami Herald, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Atlantic Journal-Constitution. She's written for Essence Magazine and Modern Maturity. In 2016, she contributed to a book of essays called Our Black Sons Matter, written by Black mothers of sons. And in 2018, Sara presented before the Knight Commission on Trust, Media, and Democracy, writing an article about that topic. So last June, she was sought out and featured on multiple BBC news programs offering commentary about the protests throughout the country and the world. She is a coach in the major metro newspaper table stakes program, and she's the program lead for the new BIPOC Sustainability Accelerator funded by Facebook, designed to empower Black and Brown owned media organizations. She served as an adjunct professor of communications at Oglethorpe University in Atlanta. She's taught in a collaborative course at the University of Pennsylvania with Dr. John Jackson called Urban Ethnography, which taught students how to create audio documentaries that aired on WURD Radio. She's completed the Harvard Business School's executive leadership program. It's called the Business of Entertainment, Media, and Sports. That in 2018. 2019, she completed her Media Transformation Challenge, formerly the Schultzberger Program at the Harvard Kennedy School. Most recently, she completed the JSK Community Impact Fellowship at Stanford. She's obviously received numerous awards, including the Beacon of Light Award from the Congressional Black Caucus for HealthQuest Magazine's Outstanding Health Coverage. She received the Woman of Substance Award from the National Medical Association. She was recognized as one of the 100 people to watch by Business Philadelphia Magazine and selected for Women of Distinction Award given by the Philadelphia Business Journal. I'm going to take a breath and say, right now, what a stellar career. There's more, but I don't want to keep doing this. Sara, I want to bring you in. Good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. Wow, what a story. What's phenomenal.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. That's kind of like the full, that's not my abbreviated bio. You were reading the whole thing, the whole enchilada.
And it's absolutely fascinating. I enjoyed reading it because each line I read reminded me of things that are so critical in our community, timely in the world, and that are important to me personally as an editor, as a journalist, as a reporter, and as an entrepreneur. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, just hearing your story, and in part, with your permission, sharing mine with you, because I think we've got some parallel experiences and perhaps parallel, maybe even competing observations. But I think that's the joy of being in our profession as journalists. We get a chance to pursue and challenge and seek clarity by conversation, by discussion, and by examination. So welcome. So give me the mission for WURD. What's your primary mission for that organization as it exists today?
Sure. Well, thank you again for inviting me on and having me, giving me an opportunity to tell my story and the story of the work that I'm doing. So WURD is a Black talk radio station in Philadelphia. My family owns the station. This is actually our 20th anniversary in 2023. My father purchased WURD in 2003, and we have been building and growing and expanding the station ever since. And Philadelphia, for your audience that may not know, is one of the Blackest cities in the country. We Black people are the majority racial group in Philadelphia. We are about 44% of the Philadelphia overall population. And so, and historically, Philadelphia is the birthplace of the country. A lot of people know about 1776, but Philly has always had a very proud and strong African-American presence from, dating back to the founding of the country. And it was at one point a destination for enslaved Africans to, migrate and make their way to freedom. And so, and Philly has this long history of of advocacy and activism for Black people. And so WURD's mission, I'll get to the question. The mission is really to be a venue, a space where Black Philadelphians can speak and be heard in their own voice. We can talk about our successes, our challenges, our Black excellence, the diversity of who we are as people, the full complexity of our humanity, as opposed to being represented so often in mainstream media as one tiny, often negative thing. And so we see ourselves as a place. We're a two-way talk radio station. So we are in conversation with our community all day, every day. And we've expanded to be very multimedia, multi-platform. So we have as you mentioned, AM and FM radio signal, but we also have what we call WURD TV, which is where we stream on Facebook Live and on our website. We have 3 websites: WURDradio.com, EcoWord.com, which you mentioned is our environmental justice initiative, and WordWorks.com, which is our jobs and economy and wealth creation website. That's part of our program called Livelihood. And we do a lot of community events. So we are all about reaching the community, educating, informing, and engaging with our community so that we can, bridge the information gap that too often exists in big cities, especially a city like Philadelphia, where there's tons of resources, but for whatever reason, they don't tend to get to the people who need them the most, which are often Black folks. So we are that bridge and that gap filler.
So when your dad started or bought the station, what was his vision? What do you think he had in mind? What motivated him to buy it? What were his goals and what were his expectations? And now that you've sort of assumed the leadership, what has been the change, if any?
Oh, boy. So my father was a physician by training, and he was also a very, very entrepreneurial. He was, I would say, a Renaissance man. And he became very successful in healthcare management. And so he got a contract from the state of Pennsylvania that became very lucrative to do managed care for West Philadelphia residents, which is a predominantly Black community. And he had a lot of success with that, expanded, and ended up being acquired. The company ended up being acquired by United Healthcare. And so that created what I call a wealth event. And so my dad was always a race man. He really believed in empowering Black people. And before he had his wealth event, he was caring for, because his career, he was a practicing physician for 32 years. And but he always owned the properties where he had medical centers. He was a very entrepreneurial physician. So anyway, he bought WURD at the behest of a radio legend in Philadelphia named Cody Anderson. Cody Anderson had run stations. He had owned stations in Philadelphia. And he came to my father it was around 2001, 2002, to say that the flagship Black talk radio station in Philadelphia at the time was called WHAT. It was going out of business. And Philly has this long history of Black talk radio, a very long history. And Philly was about to be without a Black talk station. And so Cody Anderson went to my father and said, "Doc, look, there's this station, WURD, that's for sale. A lot of people know about your success. A lot of people are going to come to you and ask you for money for lots of different things. You can't give everyone money, but you can give them a voice through this radio station." And, my dad was a real soft touch, and that really resonated with him. And so he did. He had the resources, and he bought the station. And at the time, it was a very different business model than it is now. It was so I won't go into what the business model was, but it was actually a very and my dad went into, because he was not a media person. He went into buying WURD, and he said, I don't have to make money on this. I don't have to make a lot of money on this business enterprise. I'm doing this as a community service, but I don't want to lose money. And
Right.
so from about 2000, and you know where I'm going with this, Al,
Yep.
from about 2003, when the sale was completed, really, I mean, real talk, until about 2014, 15, the station lost money every month. And, it was actually bleeding money for the first, I would say 7 or 8 years of its existence. And so I'm one of 6 children. All of my siblings worked in the family business in healthcare. I was the only journalist, which is why I started HealthQuest magazine. I started a health magazine because I wanted to stay true to my journalistic roots, but I wanted to also be, industry adjacent to my family's business. And, the magazine, I ran that and grew it for 10 years. I ended up closing that in 2002 after September 11th happened. And as you know, the bottom dropped out of the advertising industry. It dropped out of everything, really. The bottom just fell out of American society in a way. And so I ended up closing the magazine down. And around that same time, my dad was buying WURD, and I was invited to do a radio show. And I was very clear, I did not want to be involved at all in the management of the radio station. I was still kind of licking my wounds from having to close my magazine. It was very painful, as you can imagine, as an entrepreneur, when you put everything you have into something and it doesn't. And I have the kind of constitution that if I think I can make something work, I'm going to just keep at it until, I just believe it's going to turn around. And I really did. And eventually I had to come to the realization that I was not going to be able to make my magazine successful. And so I closed that down, started doing the show on WURD with the understanding that that was the extent of my involvement at the radio station. The station floundered. It struggled mightily. It was losing money, a lot of money every month. It went through many leadership changes. And I started feeling complicit in its demise by my lack of participation in the business. I was the only one in my family that had media experience. I didn't know radio, but I knew how to run a media business. I knew about advertising. I knew about product development. I knew about distribution and marketing and multi-platform. And so I started feeling like it was like family malpractice to be willfully sitting on the sidelines when this business was just floundering and struggling and sputtering. And it was a very public business because everybody knew my family owned it. And so it just didn't feel like it was a good look, and it wasn't right for me to just willfully sit by the sideline. And so in 2009, I dipped my toe in by doing a big event. That was the 1-year anniversary of Barack Obama's 1-year election.
Right.
And it was really successful. Tell me if we need to take a break, because I know how radio rolls. And so
no. I'll jump in and
let me know. Okay.
Remind people who we are. But this story is fascinating, and you're hitting every string of my heart with every word that you say. And my daughter runs my company.
Okay.
I'm tracking you in a major way right now. So go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah,
I'm looking at my future in listening to you.
Yeah. So I was, so basically 2009, we do this big event. I just say, let me just see, what I could do with this enterprise. And so my family was like, whoa, that was incredible. And so they asked me to write a strategic plan and to write the business plan. And so little by little, so I write the strategic plan, I have this vision for it being, this multimedia kind of powerhouse that really is super serving the Black community in Philadelphia. And so they loved it. By 2010, I was installed, I would say, as the president and general manager. And that was probably the hardest thing I had ever done. So I have 3 sons. Mm-hmm. My oldest 2 were older, and I said I was not going to go back to, and I worked the entire time when they were very little. I was doing my magazine, I was traveling, I was like, and I said I wasn't going to do that with my 3rd child, who was born after I closed the magazine. And I said I was going to just like try and be home and be present, although I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm just not wired that way. I was still doing all kinds of stuff. So like in between closing the magazine and starting to work at WURD, I became a yoga teacher, and I went and did a holistic nutrition program. And so I started doing yoga and nutrition workshops for Black women in between WURD and Health Quest. Anyway, so that's why I'm saying I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I just was like, I had to do something. So anyway, I start at the radio station, and boy, it has been a real journey from 2010, which is when I jumped in 100%, mm-hmm. to now, which is 13 years later. And I have, what I inherited, quite frankly, was an organization that had very low self-esteem. Mm. That did not believe that we could be anything more than like a low power AM radio station. And so, and I'll tell you, having started a company, like a startup, which is URL Media, and inheriting a low performing media organization, that's like a turnaround. Mm-hmm. It is very, very hard. It is very hard, way harder to inherit something that you have to turn as opposed to starting from something from scratch. That's my experience. Okay. Because
let me tell people, this is yes. I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest, Sara M. Lomax. She's president and CEO of WURD Radio in Pennsylvania, and doing so much more. Let's continue the conversation. Go ahead, Sara.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so, I've had to, because when you inherit something that is losing a lot of money, it's almost like, you break it, you buy it. Even though I didn't break it, I was now 100% responsible for fixing it. And, my family was really, when I inherited it, when I took over, my family was really at a point of ready to pull the plug because it had been losing money for so long. And so I was like, let me just give me a minute. Let me see if there's, if I can make some changes and see if we can start to turn it. And so it's taken a while, but we have become profitable over the last several years. We have expanded a lot, and I have an amazing team. So it's I've learned a lot. And I have to say, the reason I wanted to mention the yoga and the nutrition and meditation as like that interim, everything that I did up to the time that I started with WURD prepared me for the work that I'm doing now. And so I firmly believe that my yoga practice and my meditation practice and what I know about nutrition and mind, body, spirit connectivity has allowed me to be successful in this work. Because I don't know if this has been your experience, but what I know, because there were my father passed away in 2013. And before that, so between 2010 and 2013, he was kind of the backstop, if there was like a shortfall or if there was like a, like there was a gap in payroll, he was there to cover it. But when he passed away in 2013, it was like, and as I know, this, like what's happening now, post
Mhm.
George Floyd, post 2020 protests, where, people want to give more money and more shine to Black media and Black businesses, or at least they
Maybe,
did in
maybe,
2021, right?
maybe.
A little bit more.
Okay, okay.
All I know is, like, pre-2020, nobody was giving you lines of credit. Nobody
Right,
was giving you
right.
loans. Nobody was giving you any love or looks.
N-
And
nor the
so,
time of day.
not the time of day,
Mhm.
and I have to reiterate that over and over and over again to young media entrepreneurs of color who are just getting in the game now. Cause I'm like, yo, it's different. It might not be where it should be, but it's definitely different from pre 2020. Cause
Mhm.
and so I had many sleepless nights when I did not know how I was going to make payroll. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people, and this is I'm speaking to your daughter now. A lot of people, first of all, they underestimated my ability because I was the owner's daughter
Mhm.
when I took control.
Mhm.
They assumed that I only had the job, and really, I probably did. I only had that job because I was the owner's daughter.
Mhm.
But what they didn't know is that I actually knew my stuff, and I actually had skills and abilities to do the work, and I was committed and I was determined. And someone said to me, a lot of people think that you were given this, but
Mhm.
you have created it based on merit. And it's
Mhm.
true. It's very true. And and believe me, I totally underestimate. I do not take for granted that I've had a lot of opportunity and privilege
Mhm.
because of what my father was able to accomplish and what I was able to step into. But to take the station from where it was to where it is now um, was not based just on his um, legacy. It's been a lot of work and
Mhm.
effort. And so yeah, so
Hey,
now we're
let me jump in. Have you? So
yeah.
where did you work outside of the family business, and outside of your own business? Did you have? Well, I listed some of your employment, right? Talk
Yeah,
about
no,
that
so
experience of working both in Black organizations, if you were, and in white organizations. What's the difference between working and being the owner of the enterprise?
yeah, well, I'll tell you, my career has been almost 100% working within my family business and as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
The things that are in my bio were mostly freelance. Like, I wrote for Essence, I wrote for
Right, right.
these different publications, but that was really in addition to the other work that I was
Mhm.
doing. And I say this, it used to be not a point of pride because honestly, like, if you only had work experience in Black media, for many, many years, it was seen as a deficiency.
Mhm.
If you've only worked for a family business, it was seen as a deficiency. So what white organizations have done is point to, oh, she went to University of Pennsylvania. Oh, she went to Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, to validate me because
Right.
I didn't work at the New York Times. I didn't work at, the Wall Street Journal. I didn't have that pedigree. And so they got to go back to my academic history to validate me. But now I really see it as a point of strength
Mhm.
and pride that my entire career has been about building, sustaining, and amplifying Black voices and Black people, and celebrating our um, our exceptionalism, talking about our challenges, all of those things, and really figuring out the very, very difficult and complicated um, process of creating a profitable business while being an honest broker for Black people, being a place where Black people feel like they are authentically reflected and represented. That is not an easy balancing act.
Mhm.
that is not an easy balancing act to really center Black people and Black issues and serious Black issues, not just entertainment, but the complicated and hard to talk about, hard to look at issues around race and racism in this country, and invite advertisers and create a space where corporate America feels like they can support you. And a lot of them don't, quite frankly.
A lot of them don't. A lot of them
enough of them
can.
do that
A lot of
we're
them
still
will.
here.
But they do. My experience has been corporations will do right when they have to, not because it's right to do. And so as often as not, the strategy has been, how do we put them in a position where the decision they have to make is a decision that benefits us, and we know that it will benefit them as well, but they are just so focused on excluding us and pushing against us that they will even deny their own benefit and growth and their own humanity, because they feel mission one is to protect the citadel from the invaders or the barbarians. And guess what? We get to be the barbarians at the gate in their point of view, from their mind. So they're always in a structure and a posture of being intentional and on automatic in the marginalization of our people and of our progress. And they give when they have to, and when they must, and when they can't publicly reveal, what's the right word for it? Their hidden innermost agenda, and that's the maintenance of power, and it's certainly not sharing power. But our job has to be to demand that we have our seat at the table, or we create our own tables that reflect and project our own interest, and that we negotiate. As you say, we're honest brokers for the interest of our people at the table of decision in the realm of power. This is a great conversation.
Absolutely.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest, Sara M. Lomax, the president and CEO of WURD Radio in Pennsylvania, and so much more. And Sara, as you were speaking, so was your dad ever, was Dr. Lomax, right? Was he actively involved in the radio station, or simply the owner that managed people?
He was, my dad was a very hands-on person, and he was a very prominent person. So, and he was very approachable. So all of those things can, can converge in interesting ways. He was an avid listener to the station. I think that by the time I took over, what was difficult when I first took over was that a lot of people, I was trying to put in new policies and processes and things like that. And people would go around me and go to him. And, he was famous for giving everyone an ear. And so it was very, very difficult in the early days of my management, because people knew that they could get to him. And at the beginning, he, I would make certain policies, people would go to him, and he would basically reverse what I had planned. And that was hard.
So how did you guys navigate that, you and your father, as a father-daughter, family-owned business, you in a sense having to emerge and to be a person speaking with authority and substance, at the same time respecting him and his investment, right, his ownership of the company, but in his wanting, I'm sure, to create a space for you and the family. I'm sure his mission had to include the idea of generational wealth, of how do all of my family and generations prosper. How did you negotiate your conflict with him? I'm asking as a dad who's got a daughter. So this is personal for me.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I would just say the short answer is it depended. It depended on what it was. Some things I just capitulated, and I was like, whatever. Other things I like, went to the mat. And even when I went to the mat, I might have lost. But I'll tell you, there was a situation where I was going to assume the helm at one point, and before I had gotten all the way in, my dad made a decision that overruled me, and I said, never mind, I'm not going to do it. And so that was a situation where I was like, whoa, I can't operate like this. But then, I came back. It came back around maybe a year or two later. And I think he was recognized that he needed the kind of leadership that I was able to provide. So I think he was humbled by kind of the repeated, challenges that the station was having. And I think by the time I took over and, he was starting to be like, yo, I think you might actually, and we started having wins. He started seeing success and some things turning around. And he was like, oh, okay, maybe she does know what she's doing. And then towards the very end of his life, he was just like, yo, talk to Sarah, don't try and come to me. And what's wonderful is I still work with all of my siblings. They're all involved in various ways in kind of on the periphery, but still involved in the station.
Are you the youngest or oldest or in the middle? Where are you?
I'm the second to youngest.
Okay.
And my oldest brother is our CFO. My second brother is a real estate developer who is developing a new property where WURD is going to be, our new offices will be. My sister right above me just passed in May, but she was our general counsel and our HR director. She was amazing. And then my youngest brother is the chair of the Lomax companies, which is the umbrella organization for WURD. And he's our business development. Anytime we do a big deal, get an investor or are thinking about acquiring something, he does all the due diligence and makes sure that the legal and the business stuff is straight. Yeah. So, and the thing that I was going to say is that my siblings, we're in lockstep. They're like, yo, WURD is Sarah's. Let her do her thing. And as long as she's not, as long as she's making money, we're good.
So I'm visualizing this powerhouse juggernaut of a family that you have and that you are, this organization that you are. And it sounds like you're saying that each person has a portfolio or a point, and that you sort of have created a process that really respects and nurtures the thinking, the interest, the curiosity of each member. And so that your first response when a person says something is not, oh, no, that's not going to work. It's probably, check it out, and that person can depend on all of you to bring your best ideas or criticism or evaluation, assessment, and energy to prove or disprove that idea. But it works that way. Is that fair or not?
Well, I would say now it is. It wasn't, when the station was really struggling, I have to be honest, people really, including my family members, they were not believers. My mother, I will say, who is still with us, has always been the champion for WURD. She has always, even in our darkest days, she was the one who was like, this is a gem. We need to support this no matter what. She has been steadfast through the hard times and through the now better times, the more flush times. But I will say that, but for my mother and my father and my commitment, I think that people were like, ye of little faith. People did not think that WURD had the capacity to actually turn around. And what's so fascinating, Al, now is that WURD has become, in my family's portfolio, we're not the most profitable. We're not wildly successful, but it has become this gem because it is so well respected in Philadelphia, which again is, the leadership is predominantly Black in city council and the police commissioner, and the stakeholders in Philadelphia know the value of WURD, and that has created value for the other business enterprises that my family's business are involved in. So it's been fascinating to see that shift, that turn from being kind of like the junkyard dog, quite frankly, that's like, we'll tolerate you, to actually being a serious contributor to this this portfolio. And the work that we're doing it really is a powerful asset, like in all versions of that word.
And it sounds like you have continued to evolve and emerge as a beacon, as a pathfinder for our community in particular. But in doing so, you're really showing a path forward for the entire community, for the entire city of Philadelphia, and for actually our country, because you're illuminating the talent, the gifts of those that have been marginalized and denied. And you represent the truth of our people's genius, our gifts, and our capacity to serve ourselves, and in doing so, serve community, serve humanity. I've got a great friend, a person that I admire a lot. I'm sure you know him, Bob Bogle,
Yes,
at the Philadelphia Tribune. So he's been like, when I started and joined the National Newspaper Publishers Association, he'd always been a fixture and emerged over the years to be holding all of the officer spots and even being chairman of the organization. But he was a marvelous person to watch, because he was a great salesman, a great organizer, a great orator. And he's been on this program a couple of times, and always enjoy him. How do you work with other media, and where do you see, as you are developing this vision and the voice, the word concept, the word mission, describe more how the marketplace is changing? I love the fact that you told me to begin with that your city is 44% African American or Black, and
Black, yeah.
Here in Minnesota, when I started, Sarah, the Black population was maybe about 4%. And when I would go to a corporation asking for advertising in my new community newspaper that served, say, North Minneapolis, which is where I am right now. I'm operating from my home, but the table I'm sitting at now is the table I started my newspaper at in 1974, right?
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
But I go to advertisers and say, I was a young firebrand journalist, and I'm going to turn the world inside out, upside down. I'm pursuing the truth for our people. And they listen and say, we gave in church on Sunday, get out of here. So they looked at our business, not as business, but as charity, right? Didn't take us seriously. And I say today, still would like to not take us seriously, but I think we determine that dialogue and how it's going to go by the courage we bring to every encounter, every conversation, and by the expectations we place and the results we seek. What was your experience in terms of the environment for your radio media from then to now, and where do you see you going?
Sure. Well, I just want to again say, I want to just take my hat off to you to start a publication in 1974, you said. I mean, that's amazing that you are still in building and growing and expanding your voice and serving your community. So I just really admire your work. As I said earlier, to me, there is a huge kind of shift that happened. That's like there's pre-2020 and there's like post 2020. And I'm not saying that post 2020 is perfect at all or great even. But my experience, and I've said this to a lot of people, that when you don't respect, value, see a community as fully human or valuable, you are not going to respect a media organization that serves that community.
Right.
And so if you think that Black people are criminals and, whatever all of the negative stereotypes that have been portrayed about us for centuries in mainstream media, if that is your understanding of Black people, you are not going to value a WURD or, an Insight magazine or, the work that we are committed to, because you don't value that community. And so that has been my experience. But at the same time, I go back to, Freedom's Journal, we have such a rich history of Black journalists and media people who, during slavery, they were committed to advocating on behalf of Black people, because we deserved to determine our own reality and to portray our own reality and not allow other people's perceptions of us to be the way that the only representation. And so, you go back to, I think Freedom's Journal was published in 1827 or maybe it was 1849. I might have my dates mixed up, but it was pre the end of slavery. Let me just say that. And so, I take such comfort and I get so much motivation when I think about, Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells and, all the people who came before us doing this work and doing it without any real, support. And so if they could do it, it's like easy peasy on this side.
Let me ask you to draw a line between Move, I think Philadelphia Move, and George Floyd.
Oof. Oh, man. So the Move bombing was one of the most horrific incidents of kind of, I would say, state violence, police violence against civilians. I'd say in the history of the country, which gets very little coverage. Basically, there was I don't know how many people describe the Move organization differently, but some people call it a back to nature group. But it was a group of Black people who were had several altercations with the police over multiple years, and they had been kind of a thorn in the police's side for probably 10, 15 years. And so they were in a house, they lived in a house, and it was adults, children, in West Philadelphia, which is a predominantly Black community. And the community, to be like, the story that's not told is that the community really wanted them out. The community, the Black people in that community, did not like having them living in their community because they had like dogs, they were perceived to have weapons. The children were like unkempt. They had a microphone, like an amplification system on the house, and they would blare like loud messages all hours of the night because they were really antagonizing to their neighbors. So it was not like they were well loved, quite frankly. But the police. So I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think the neighborhood kind of went to the city and said, "Look, you've got to like get these people out." And I'm not exactly sure what sparked the specific bombing, but the police ended up dropping a bomb on top of the house of the MOVE building that burned, and it started burning. And the the fire commissioner said, let the fire burn. Do not put the fire out, let the fire. And so that decision ended up burning a whole city block of innocent people.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up killing,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 13 people from the MOVE family,
Mm-hmm.
including several children.
Mm-hmm.
And there are debates back and forth between whether, there were people who were fleeing the MOVE house and the police shot them, or they were fleeing and they started shooting at them. So they retreated back into the house and ended up, but it is one of the most horrific things. And there was a Black mayor at the time,
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Wilson Good, who ended up taking responsibility for it, even though, there were questions as to whether it was his decision. But it's just one of the most, and no one was ever held accountable for it, really. The only person who the only people that went to prison for that were MOVE members. Now imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not hard to imagine. I mean, it's par for the course. So how do you connect that with
how to
in your
connect that
mind with
I
George
mean,
Floyd?
I think that the impunity by which police are able to enact terror on Black people, on Black lives, is the through line.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, but for the fact that was captured on video,
Mm-hmm.
all those cops probably would have been, exonerated or not charged at all. And so, the big difference is in 1985, which is when MOVE happened, that we didn't have cameras on our phone. We didn't have all that stuff.
Right.
Even though the media was there. We have lots of footage of that MOVE bombing and the fire, but you didn't have people inside the house taking videos
Mm-hmm.
and chronicling like now you chronicle everything.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the difference is that, the police officers were held accountable
Mm-hmm.
in George Floyd's murder. But not in the MOVE bombing. Still, nope.
And not across the country, but it's not too late. I think our people are still seeking justice, and we are becoming more and more used to the idea that we can and should, and that we ultimately must demand and seek justice everywhere. Because I think for the longest time, when those of us in the activist community raised our voices, there was an ambivalence. There was a sense of passivity in the community saying, don't stir it up,
Yep.
don't make them mad, or things that could be worse. And so we had an ability to get along or go along. And I think we're beginning to shed that and beginning to be more comfortable in our authentic selves. And our authenticity, again, demands that we respect our own humanity, our own voice, our own aspirations, and our own expectations that we set for ourselves and community, and therefore we set expectations for humanity. And to the degree that institutions fail or transgress our humanity or humanity itself, which is our humanity, we must hold institutions accountable and demand and expect and force change or force alternatives for our people and for the community. But I go on and on like this.
Could I say, I know we got to get ready to wrap, but can I just say, you had asked me about how am I working with other media? And I just want to speak to my new venture, URL Media, which stands for Uplift, Respect, and Love. And that is born out of a necessity to work collaboratively with other Black and Brown media organizations to make sure that we collectively have more sustainability and expansion in terms of growth. And so URL is a network of Black and Brown owned media organizations from across the country. We started in 2021 with 8 members. We now have 20 members, and it's Black, African American, Native American, Latino, South Asian, East Asian, immigrant, and we come together to share content, create greater awareness for each other's content, and share revenues as a way to build, as I said, greater sustainability and longevity. So that's a very intentional.
We have an organization here that I was one of the founders of called the Minnesota Multicultural Media Consortium, and it's comprised of Black, African, Asian, Latino, Native American, Hmong media owners working together, selling together, and trying to create. And the principle that we operated from, Sarah, was that the story I told you about being dismissed summarily because we were perceived to be small and insignificant. We put ourselves and our stories and circulations together and came back to the market saying we represent 1 million people or 500,000 as opposed to 40,000. And is that a number that meets your criteria? And obviously it does, and it did. What it did is removed one more excuse, one more layer of resistance, and that's what the work has always been. But so how is that going so far, and what can people around the country do to support you?
Yeah, so it's going really, really well. We've actually come out of the gate profitable after 2 years. We've been profitable each year. We have been able to distribute almost $650,000 to our network partners across the nation. We are, just growing and growing and growing in terms of being able to support other aspects of the needs of our partner organizations, whether it's how to attract, high caliber talent to continue to elevate our organizations, how to create succession planning, which I'm in the midst of doing as well. But like all the things that we struggle with as independent Black and Brown media organizations, URL is trying to step into and speak into those issues to help our organization.
We got to wrap it up right here, Sarah. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. Let's stay in touch. I really want to have you and my daughter, Sara McFarlane, have a conversation sometime.
I would love to.
Thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.